Over the past few weeks, there's been renewed interest in the NHL 2K series, at least if the skyrocketing view counts for my NHL 2K10 retrospective is anything to go off of, so what better time than now to revisit the franchise? Now, that specific video covered not only 2K10, but the series as a whole, which led me to have to make a choice. Where do I begin? Do we start from the very beginning? Well, as you can tell by the title, not quite. Maybe someday we'll revisit the first few games in the NHL 2K series, but with a new console generation on the horizon, with Project Scarlet being announced at this year's E3, I thought that 2K6 would be the best game to cover, as it was the first hockey game of a new generation. EA NHL 2006 released in North America on September 6, 2005, to tremendous reviews, and is still to this day a common answer to the question of what is your favorite game in the EA NHL series. Now, 2K6 launched the next day on September 7th to similar scores, while still carrying the cheaper price point of $20 USD that helped the developer compete with EA on basically every front, even leading to EA locking down exclusive rights with the NFL for its Madden series. That, of course, is a well-covered story, and a story for another time. 2.5 months later, the Xbox 360 would launch in North America. Along with it, NHL 2K6, now at the full $60 price point. The next gen had its first ice hockey video game, although the PS3 would have to wait until next year when, funny enough, NHL 2K7 was the first hockey game for that console. EA would wait until the next year to debut on the next-gen consoles, and you can see my review of NHL 07 by clicking on the eye thingies in the top corner, and they would debut a major innovation, the skill stick. Now with 2K6, it's tough to claim that there are any major innovations, if any, and while the reviews weren't as high, this was a major moment. Obviously, the game was never going to be a top seller for the new console when its lineup consists of Call of Duty 2, Dead or Alive 4, Madden 06, etc., but they did have the market cornered for nearly a year. The question is, as it always is the game good, and what does it do well compared to its modern-day counterparts? Well, to start, let's get the negativity out of the way. Aside from boasting arguably the worst soundtrack I've heard in a sports video game, no disrespect to Dixie Witch, Five Horse Johnson, or Throttle Rod intended, of course, the game did lose the ESPN license that it previously had with 2K5, which I can only assume is due to the NHL losing its agreement with ESPN following the 04-05 lockout. In a way, perhaps it wasn't the worst thing in the world for the game. Granted, not being able to brand your game as ESPN NHL 2K is itself a negative, but being able to have the freedom and design when it comes to your presentation can certainly lead to improvements. It's a similar situation to what we're currently seeing with the EA NHL series and NBC parting ways leading into NHL 20. And one could argue the presentation did take a step forward, especially with crowd shots, player tracking, and other little features that you'll see throughout playing the game. Although the new commentary is a debatable point as to whether or not it's an upgrade, as Bob Cole replaces Gary Thorne and Bill Clement. I enjoy Bob Cole. I love Gary Thorne, though. You're beautiful. Aside from that, the All-Star Skills Competition, which was one of the brightest points from 2K5, and a feature that I still wish EA would use to this day, took a bit of a step back. There is no more All-Star Weekend. Most of the drills have been reworked into franchise mode as a way to scout players. But that's really it for the negatives, unless you're not a fan of the more animation-heavy gameplay as compared to EA's product, of course. And frankly, it's impressive. Aside from the name change, there were more behind-the-scenes changes for the series that could have seen the game take a massive hit in quality. 2K5 was developed by Kush Games and published by Sega. 4 months or so after the launch, Kush's higher-up Visual Concepts was acquired by Take-Two Interactive alongside the 2K license from Sega. The next day, 2K Games was officially established, and of course, it's still going to this day with the likes of NBA 2K, WWE as well. So, yeah. This game could have been a disaster, and somehow wasn't, so I give them credit for that. In terms of modes, this time around, we still have numerous carryovers from the previous year. Pond Hockey, Mini Rink, a personal favorite of mine, Party Mode, which is a collection of minigames, most of which are fun, some are very much not. And we also have the Dream Team Challenge Ladder that was also added in the previous year. And of course, the main event for me, Franchise Mode. The highlights, full career stats, an early form of an advanced stat with production, which showcases the average time on ice for a player before they typically put up a point, signing bonuses and incentives when negotiating contracts. There's a very basic form of minor league team control, staff contracts, team and line chemistry, and fatigue affecting player attributes. In terms of gameplay, we have an improved goalie mode, which is extremely weird. Pro controls, which are also extremely weird, where you use the right stick to complete certain actions. On-the-fly coaching, which is what you'd expect with changing strats mid-game like we currently see in the EA NHL series. Nets off mooring, ref collisions, broken glass, all the things that annoy some people due to random stoppages. Icon passing, which is lovely. Icon player switching as well. Not everyone's favorite thing, but it's always interesting to see in a hockey game. And my favorite addition, the Enforcer engine. In-game, you can control who fights. Everyone has a fighter and enforcer option. Players don't necessarily have to have both. Jerome McGinley, for example, will fight, but he's not an enforcer. And in this game, enforcers play a role. They can intimidate players on the opposing team with checks, resulting in attribute drops. But they're also much more likely to be called for penalties. Oh, and by the way, the fighting engine, still the greatest I have ever seen in a hockey game. EA, please steal this. Bring it up to date for 2019 standards. Please. Other notable inclusions sees historical teams, although if a player isn't in the game up to that point, they don't actually have their name attached, but obviously it's fairly easy to rename someone Bobby Orr or Ray Bourque. Customizing players isn't really all that special, nor is the Create a Team feature, aside from some of the amazing logos in the game, including my favorite that you're seeing right now. The Skybox is still in. It houses records, stats, unlockables, a game room with shuffleboard, air hockey, and trivia. Although I will say 2K5, NFL 2K5 that is, has a much better version of something like this. We also have attributes like checking, passing, and shooting bias, toughness, composure, nerve, leadership, shovel/garbage shooting, one-time shots, backhands, and shot quickness, all of which makes each individual player that much more unique. And a fun fact, this is the first game, at least with the 360 version of NHL 2K6, to have Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin be on the game's default roster. They would be added via roster update to other games, but of course this game launched in November. The NHL season started before that. They're in on the default roster. Speaking of rosters, uploaded alongside this will be a roster rundown for those who care to watch that. It was a fun one. Some player pictures are hilarious. We found someone who might be my dad, and we also discovered some goons of NHL past who are interesting, to say the least. Overall, NHL 2K6 is solid. It's inoffensive at its worst, and a decent way to begin life on a new generation of consoles. I'm certainly intrigued, though, to see what the next 3 games have to offer upon revisiting them as we bridge the gap between 2K6 and the gem known as 2K10. Of course, 2K10, we found so many positives that series provided, and I am intrigued to see. I know games like, really all 3 games, 2K7, 2K8, and 2K9, have their positives. I know a lot of people love 2K8 in particular. So like I said, that's what the point of this series is, to go back and see what these games did well and what's been left behind. And with 2K10, I think we found the crown jewel, but I think these next 3 games might each have something that makes them worthwhile to go back and play. So I thank you guys very much for checking out this video, for checking out this series. Of course, I'm going to be doing this as a somewhat regular thing with the initial bout of videos in the Hindsight series, because I couldn't get a better name for it, with 2K10, and between NHL 07 and 13, that was more about just, okay, here's a ton of videos, enjoy them, and we'll continue to be adding to the back library. And like I said, up next, 2K7. If you guys enjoyed the video, you know the deal. Do all the YouTube things. Let me know what you think of 2K6. Have you played it? Do you remember it? Are you going to check it out after watching this? Or are you just going to be like, nah, I bought 2K10. I'm good. Although apparently 2K10 is more expensive in Canada. So I'm sorry that it's stupidly expensive for no reason. Someone actually said it was cheaper for them to order it from the States and then just get it like shipped. Like it's weird. It's weird. But check out the 2K series if you can. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.